Good morning. I'm Charles Onyango, a teacher of English literature, and today I would like to take you through functional writings. As you are all aware, functional writing is one of the questions that are tested in English, paper 1, and it's out of 20 marks. So for our bright students, or a student or a candidate who is sensitive and keen enough should be able to score at least 20 marks in functional writing for her or him to be on the right track. So today I would like us to have a look at one of the examples of the functional writings that are mainly tested in English paper 1, and that is report writing. So the word report itself, it means a gathered information that talks more about something or somebody, or it can also talk about the events, and the reports are always put in form of oral. The word oral itself means word of mouth. The reports can be passed using a word of mouth. The reports can also be in form of written. Then we also have got these types of reports. One, the oral reports. Just as we have seen under the introduction, the definition of the word report, the oral reports are these which are put across by word of mouth. Then we also have got the second one, which is a confidential report. How does a confidential report look like? Confidential report is the same as the recommendation letter. It's also the same as testimonials. So, to my dear students, you may realize that at times we can test your understanding about the recommendation letter. So, if we don't want to use the word recommendation letter or testimonials, we may decide to settle on the word confidential report. They mean the same thing. Then finally, we have investigative report. And this is what I would like us to have a look at in our today's lesson. So how does this investigative report looks like? There's also some of the features that must be captured if it comes to writing the investigative reports. So the investigative reports must be in form of writing. So what are some of the features, the common features that are found in investigative reports? First, we have headlines. Headlines is the same as a topic. The topic must be written in capital letters, and the word report must appear, followed by what the report is all about. And this one will depend on the question that is tested or that is given to you as a student. So when writing the headlines, you have to start by the word report, followed by the main aim or what the report is all about in capital letter and underlined. After that, the second feature that we also have, that we have to consider when writing report writing, is introduction. How does introduction look like? So when writing the introduction, you have to tell us something about the aim of the investigation. Because it's about investigative reports, so therefore the aim of the investigation that you are carrying out must be clearly stipulated for it to make sense. Apart from writing the aim of the investigation under the introduction, you also have to include something under the terms of reference. What do I mean by these terms of reference? Or the scope of limit. So you can talk of terms of reference, or you can talk of scope of limit. Terms of reference. So these terms of reference, they include the time. Yes, where you'll talk about the time. Yes, where you're supposed to talk about the date. And the venue or the place where the investigation is supposed to take place. Then apart from that, we also have to come up with a list of committee members. Remember, most of the time, maybe it's a group, if it is an institution, if it is an organization, there is a group that may be given a task to carry out investigation pertaining certain events or concerning something or concerning somebody, just as we have seen from the definition part of it. So the list of committee members is supposed to appear under introduction. Then once you are done with the introduction, you move to the next level, and that is method. What is the methodology that is used to collect this information? So the data collection, what we mean by the method or procedure, this one includes the data that is mainly used to collect the information from the field. And we are all aware, I believe, most of the students, you know what we mean, methods of collecting the data. So here is where we have examples, the sampling. You can collect the data using observation. You just observe, and you can map with your own conclusion. Again, you can also use the interview method of collecting the data. So if there's certain people, maybe the groups of people, maybe you like to get vital information from them, you can use interviews. Apart from interviews, you can also use questionnaire. Here is where you involve the audience or the participants in questions. Then apart from that, once you are done with methods or the procedure, then you also have to capture something about findings. These methods that you are also using, you have used the observation, you have used sampling, or you have used the interviews or questionnaire, etc., tape recording, the video recording, and etc. Then what are the findings? The findings that are found must be clearly written down and outlined clearly for someone to be able to trace or to make a proper follow-up. So the findings themselves, this was include the points that are captured under the investigation, and mainly they're talking more about the causes of investigation. For any investigation to take place, there must be causes. What are some of these factors that prompt you to come up with an investigation? So they have to be written down in point forms or in subheadings. Then after findings, we also have got a conclusion. So conclusion is where we have a recap of the points. You've talked about the findings, some of the factors that have led to your investigation, and therefore you are supposed to conclude. There must be a recap of these points. What is common? What can you say that is common about these points that you have put across? So if it comes to conclusion, it's supposed to be written in short, concise, and accurate. You're supposed to be straight to the point. And most probably, it's supposed to be 2 lines. Then once you are done with the conclusion, it's recommendations. The recommendations come immediately after the conclusion. So this recommendation simply means these are just the way forward to the solutions offered to the findings. So whatever you are writing under the recommendations, they have to be paged with that which you found under the findings. If, for example, your finding point 1 was talking about 1, 2, 3, then we have to see the solution offered to that was your first point of findings, 1, 2, 3, and etc. Then once you are done with the recommendations, once you are done with the recommendation, then you proceed to the last part, which is now signing off. Now, if we talk of signing off, what are you supposed to capture or what does it entail? Here is where you have to include the word compiled by. And in most of the cases, the person or the one who is responsible for writing the reports, the investigative report, is mostly secretary. So if the word compiled by, then the name of the person, then the last part of it, you come up with designation or position. The position held by the person. And this one, just as we have said, is most likely secretary. Now, with that in mind, let us now have a look at a sample question, and how to go about it. You come across a question in exam that talks about investigative report. How do you go about it? Let us look at this example of questions here. Okay, we have an example of investigative report that is given here. So there is a question here. You are the secretary of the environmental club in your school. Then your school has been experiencing frequent water shortage and huge water bills. Your club was asked to investigate how water is used and recommend ways of conserving it to solve the problem. You completed your investigations. Then after completing the investigations, you are required to write a report to the principal showing the causes and your recommendations to the solutions to this problem. Causes and your recommendations to the solutions to this problem. And just as I told you before that functional writings comprise of 20 marks, so it's always the first question of English paper 1. And this question here is out of 20 marks. So before we look at the solution of how to go about that question, there are some of the things, the key factors that I would like you to note under the report writing. When writing reports, they have to be in past tense. So when writing report writing, you have to note this, NB, the first one must be in past tense. The main reason why we talk of report writing written in past tense is that a report is something that is carried out from what has happened. You are investigating an event, or you are investigating something about somebody or someone that is in the past, and therefore whatever you are writing must be in form of past tense. Something else, another key point that we also have to note, when writing the findings must be in subheadings. Now, having that in mind, let us now have a look at the solution to the example that was given here under this question here. So the answer to the question that is given, we said that when writing report writing, you have to start with headline. And if it comes to headline, the word report must appear. So you start by a report. Then this report was about the environmental club in your school, which was given a task to look into the causes of water shortage and huge water bills in the school. So how should the headline looks like? You have to include something like this, a report. The word report must appear, followed by of. Because it's an environmental club in your school, so I'm using an example of school, for example, Don Bosco, a report of Don Bosco, environmental club, and this report is about water usage. It's about water usage. So having written the headline alone, clearly like that and underlined, you're supposed to get 1 mark under the formats. So remember, if it comes to functional writings, we also have got marks that are awarded for formats. There is also mark that is also awarded for content. There is also another mark that will also be added for language. So if we talk about the formats, you realize that writing this headline itself clearly like this, you will end up with 1 mark out of 20. Then the second feature that we looked into when writing report writing, we said that you also have to say something about introduction. So you write introduction. Then introduction, we say that there are key factors that you have to include, the aim of the investigation. And for the question, for example, the question that we are given here, the main aim of I am using myself as secretary of the group, on behalf of the group, that is writing a report. So the main aim of this report writing or of this investigative report was to come up with an investigation concerning pertaining the causes of water shortage that leads to high water bills. So the introduction here, the aim, we were asked, and I would like, it's recommended that we use a passive voice in this case because it is a collective responsibility. The question itself was very clear. It's our club that was asked to investigate how water is used. So a club comprised of more than 1 person. So the only way that shows that when writing report, you have to write something here that shows that it's a collective responsibility and not only for an individual. Therefore, under the introduction, you say that we were asked by the principal to investigate the causes of water shortage and the reason or reasons behind huge water bills in my school. And in my school, I've said I've used an example of Don Bosco. In Don Bosco High School. So writing the word introduction itself is also another format mark on itself. Then let us look at the content. We were asked by the principal because you are supposed to present your report to the principal. So we are making assumption that this investigation that is carried out was authored by principal. He was the one who instructed. So mentioning the word principal alone, there is also another content mark. So the word C stands for content. The F symbol stands for format. Then to investigate the causes of water shortage and the reasons behind huge water bills in Don Bosco High School. Mentioning that alone, the reason behind it is also another mark. Then that is about the aim. We have also said that you also have to write something about the terms of reference or scope of limit. So this one you can write a small subheading under introduction, or you can omit it. So the terms of reference here is where you're supposed to talk about the time, you are supposed to talk about the date, or you can as well include something about the venue. So how does it look like? The investigation was carried out on 2nd February 2020 from 2 a.m. to 10 a.m. And where was this? In the school compound. So you look at this, you realize that we have talked about the time limit that was given. The investigation was carried out for 2 hours, and it started at 2 a.m. up to 10 a.m. Then if it comes to writing this, and you have to pay attention on students clearly, you realize that the marks that are awarded under the language, we are keen, we mostly look into the spellings, punctuation, and the flow of your ideas and etc. So after writing the 2nd February, there must be a comma after February, then 2020. This one, February, must begin with a capital letter, F. Then something else, that is terms of reference. We also say that you also have to include something to deal with list of committee members. So after capturing the aim, the terms of reference, you come up with a list of committee members. So we formed the, you skip a line, then you proceed to the next paragraph. We formed the committee. We formed an investigative committee comprising of the following. So we formed an investigative committee comprising of the following. Then after that, you put a column, then you list the names of those committee members. List of committee members. We have number 1. You just write it in the middle. The chairperson is Rukia Abdallah. This is my sample, so you can as well include any name. So this is a chairperson. Then in the same committee, we also elected treasurer, and by the name Mohammed Ibrahim. This is treasurer. Then we also have got other 2 members. Aden Alif. This is a member. Then we also have got another member by the name Sophia Mohammed. And finally, I was writing the report as secretary, Yusuf Abubakar. And this is secretary. So I want you to note this. Whenever you're writing any form of functional writings that includes the secretary, the name of the secretary is supposed to appear last in the list, because it's the work of the secretary to write down the reports, and therefore it's necessary that it's supposed to appear last under the list. Then once we are done with the introduction, so you'll realize that there is also another one mark under this coming up with a list, and that is a content mark. Then we say that another feature apart from introduction, you talk of methods. So you skip a line after this, then you write methods that are used, or procedure. So methods that are used in collecting data, we say that we have got examples, sampling, observation, questionnaire, etc. So how do you go about it? You don't just list, but you have to explain how you go about them. So example, we interviewed the support staff. We interviewed the support staff. Especially the kitchen staff. Of how they had been consuming water in the kitchen. So writing the word method itself is also another format mark. Then interview, you realize that the methods that are used, already we have seen one of the methods that are used, and we expect you to come up with at least 2 methods of collecting data. So in this case here, we have got one example, which is interview. How did we use interview to carry out the findings, the investigation? We interviewed the kitchen staff concerning the consumption of water in the kitchen. Then apart from that, we also questioned other support staff about the consumption of water by cattle in the compound. So you realize that we also have got another method of collecting data that is also featured in this scenario, and that is questionnaire. From the word questioning the support staff. So how did we come up with a questionnaire? We questioned the support staff, especially those who were responsible for looking after the cattle, about the consumption of water in the compound. Then, as if that's not enough, we also took samples from some of the students. Again, we sampled the students. From cutting across cutting across from forms 1 to 4 concerning the misuse of water. Then once we have done we have come out with these methods of collecting data and how we go about it, there must be results that come out from them. So out of this we can also conclude what are the major causes to this investigation. So the findings, that's what we mean by the findings. What are some of the things, or what are some of the points that we came up with concerning the methods that we used in collecting data? After collecting this data, what are some of the findings that we came up with? So you write the word findings in a subheading. Findings. So we have findings. Writing findings alone, you also get another format mark. Then we say that the points under the findings must be in subheadings. So one of our findings, the first point under the findings, we realized that there was excessive use of water in the kitchen by the kitchen staff. So our first point is the excessive use of water in the kitchen. Then you don't just write and leave it up to that point. What did we say about it? After interrogation of the kitchen staff, after the interrogation, of the kitchen staff, it was found that they misuse water in the kitchen, especially when washing the utensils. It was found that they misuse especially when washing utensils. Another findings that we also came up with is using water tap instead of water tanks for cattle. Using water taps instead of water tanks for the cattle. Then you underline it. How did we find out that these ones contribute to the water shortage and the increase of water bill? So you realize that in the school compound, there are water tanks that were located for the livestock or for the cattle, but the support staff, we realized that most of the time they use the water taps and they leave it open for cattle, and that might also have contributed to the huge water bills that is evident within the school compound. Therefore, it was observed that instead of support staff, using water tanks, meant for their cattle, they use the water taps. Leading to the water shortage. Okay, we can as well include that, leading to water shortage. Then finally, the last point under the findings, we talk of frequent opening of the water taps. Frequent opening of the water taps. So we also realized that after sampling the students, we realized that most of the times, both student body, the staff and the support staff, they left the water taps open frequently. That leads to the frequent water shortage that is experienced within the school compound, and again, the huge water bills that is also evident within the school compound. So the samples taken from the students, proved that the water taps were on most of the time, leading to water shortage, and huge bills. So you realize, how do we award marks under the findings? Each and every findings that is brought out, there is also half a mark for the content, the first point. We also have got another second point, another content mark, then finally another content mark under the findings. Then once we are done with the findings, we move to the next level, and that is now conclusion. The conclusion. The conclusion. Just as we had said, conclusion is just a recap of what has taken place under the investigation. So it was concluded that the staff, support staff, and the students should always be keen, especially if it comes to the usage of water within the school compound. So it was observed, or it was concluded, that everyone within the school to use water according to the purpose it is intended for. So you realize that there is also another format mark under the content. Then we also have got a content mark. Then lastly, recommendations. We have got the last point, recommendations. Recommendations must be based on the findings. So these are my recommendations. The first point, the kitchen staffs were advised to use the right amount of water when cleaning utensils. Then the second, the support staff were instructed to use water tanks for the cattle instead of water taps. Then lastly, everybody within the school compound was instructed to ensure that water taps were only on when in use. Then, once you are done with all this, you write, you skip a line, and you write compiled by, and this was a report that was written by Secretary on behalf of the whole committee members. And what's the name of the Secretary? Yusuf Abubakar. Yusuf Abubakar, Club Secretary. So that's how report writing looks like. So we have got a format mark under the recommendations. There is half a mark under the content of the recommendations. Then finally, We also have got another final mark under the compilation. So if you add all this, you realize that the format itself will be having 8 marks. There is also another 8 marks under the content. The last, the language is supposed to be 4 marks. So if you add all this, you end up with 20 marks. So how do we end up with the 4 marks under the language? Here we check on the spellings, we check on the flow of the ideas, we check on the punctuation, and etc. And again the tense. It has to be in past tense, then the tone itself. So that's how the report is, investigative report is being written. So having taken you through that report writing, allow me to wish you good day, inshallah, and have a blessed day.